If there's anyone who knows anything about bringing ratings up and also basketball, it is Caitlin Clark, right? She is probably the world's foremost expert when you combine the two topics simultaneously. Of course, Clark was a guest on the New Heights podcast with Jason Travis Kelce. I'm not going to clip up the entire show, but I did feel like sharing a few of the most noteworthy or interesting bits. You know, Clark talked about a lot of the things she has talked about. She discussed her golf game and how that's more frustrating than playing basketball because you're by yourself and she's not as good at it. She talked about her life-changing year. You know, a lot of the topics that you would want to ask Caitlin Clark about. But I haven't heard her speak on this specifically. And given her star power and given her proximity to the game, I thought it would be interesting to get her perspective on the NBA ratings, which have probably been overblown a little bit. You know, they have fallen from where they were in the past. There is no question about that. This year, they actually haven't fallen as much as people make them out to be, because I think after Christmas, when they were up again, they're close to even. They're close to flat from last year, but the trend is still down overall. Now, the trend for almost all television is down because of the proliferation of streaming and other options and various things. COVID changed a lot of things, but there are legitimate things to complain about when it comes to the NBA product. You've heard people talk about the three-point shot, the lack of physicality. For me, it's the way it's officiated more than anything else. I think there's also a lack of great storylines at the moment, which is why the nostalgia pulls still work. When it's LeBron versus Curry, that's when the product is at its most interesting, which is great for the time being, but not for the future, of course. You know, it's one of the reasons that Olympic team was so appealing. You had Curry, you had LeBron, you had KD, the kind of faces of the NBA for a long time. So one of the things is they're missing that central star who happens to be Caitlin Clark and who plays in the WNBA. But Clark was asked about a few topics on the NBA, and here is what she had to say.
Did you see the new NBA All-Star format?
I did.
And how do you feel about this?
Oh, see, that's tough.
4 teams of 8 with one team being the Rising Stars.
So I saw Kevin Durant said this today or maybe yesterday or whenever it was, but they should go back to the East versus West. And that's when I loved it. I think it should be East versus West. Like, that's true All-Stars. Like,
no doubt.
East versus West, battle it out.
That's what it was about.
Yeah. So I think that's what it should be, but obviously not the commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on board for East versus West All-Stars. I think that's the whole point of it. That's why you're an All-Star. It's the best from the East versus the best in the West, play each other. See which side's better.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not a fan of any of these in-season tournaments that the NBA is doing.
Yeah. I was actually talking about this today.
How are you not? What is there to not be a fan of?
All the funky floors, and then there's tournaments, and they don't mean crap. Can we just play basketball? Can we just play basketball?
I'm getting like a migraine looking at the neon green floor. But no, I feel like it was a hit the first year, the NBA Cup, or whatever it was, and it kind of like toned down a little bit this year. But it's interesting. They're trying to spice it up.
What are your suspicions potentially as to why the NBA ratings should be down?
Honestly, like, I feel like the average just like basketball fan doesn't understand how good NBA players are, and they think it looks like they're not trying. I promise you they're trying. They're just like so good. Like, that's why it looks like they're not trying. And obviously the physicality of the league has changed a lot. And I wasn't around when it was like much more physical, and maybe people want more like beef and physicality, and people think it's gotten soft. But I think that's also because the skill has just changed. And like, that's what's great about basketball. Like, it's always evolving. Like, it's going to be different than when MJ played. It's going to be different in 10 years than it is now. So it's hard for me to like put my finger on like why it has gone down. And also it's competing against a lot of football right now. You have to take that into consideration. Like, football is just, that's America's favorite thing. I think people should I love 3-point shooting. I love seeing guys just like launch threes, but not everybody loves that. So I don't know.
What do you think about a 4-point line?
I love that. Let's do it.
That's actually a great idea. Genius. That is genius.
4-point line.
So there you have it. Caitlin Clark's thoughts on the NBA and the ratings and whatnot. And doesn't blame the 3-point shot, doesn't blame effort. The point she made about effort is something I've made to people. Like, the players in the NBA are almost too good. They can almost shoot too good too, because people can say that the 3-point stuff is a negative, but it's so effective. So how do you really argue against it when you see that the volume has gone up, but so have the percentages? So how is that a bad thing for a basketball team in the goal of winning? I think the effort thing becomes perception. I mean, she touched on the All-Star game. The All-Star game last year was embarrassing. So when you clearly don't play hard in an All-Star game like that, and you have stuff like load management, that sends a message that this is not something you need to care about until it's the playoffs, right? And the regular season doesn't matter. So people do get that in their head, and I can understand why a fan would come away feeling that way. As far as a 4-point line, I guess that could be entertaining. I don't know. I mean, you could also cut the corners off so that there aren't so many players camping out in the corner waiting for that shortest 3-point line. I like the way that FIBA International Basketball is officiated. I think NBA players have learned to become foul merchants too often because they're rewarded for it. They learn how to draw fouls rather than actually trying to score points, some of them out there. But I think you've seen some of the appeal of the WNBA in the sense of what Caitlin was hinting at with beefs and rivalries and storylines, because you did have Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark as a rookie. You had, could A'ja Wilson be a unanimous MVP, or is Caitlin going to challenge her? Is Nafisa Collier going to challenge her? How good can the Fever be? Obviously, as this new team that people were watching, so much of it was Caitlin Clark, but you had the Aces attempting to repeat, the Liberty attempting to avenge their loss in the WNBA championship. Now you have a new incoming class with Paige Beckers on the way, future classes with Juju Watkins and Hannah Hidalgo on the way. There's more of a pipeline, a development pipeline. I think that's a big deal from college to the pros, because the men's game has completely lost that. But NBA was great on Christmas Day. I mean, those games crushed the NFL as far as from a quality standpoint. And I'm sure, the NBA is going to have great playoffs, and they'll have big rated games and whatnot too. So sometimes it's just an easy topic for people to sink their teeth into or yell and scream about, and isn't necessarily as big a problem as it's made out to be, especially because they already signed the massive media rights deal. That's not going away. Now, I am an NBA fan and NBA head my whole life who is less interested in the sense, and just like Caitlin, I can't quite pinpoint it. So, which tells you it's probably a myriad of factors and not just one specific thing. But at the same time, you do see the NBA, or the WNBA, growing and exploding in the midst of it. And if you were to pick one specific reason for that, it's Caitlin Clark. So star power, that's probably the answer, or at least the number one answer on the board if you're playing Family Feud. She referenced Michael Jordan, right? And when you reference the NBA and its history, you reference those titans of the game. I just referenced Steph and LeBron. It's probably what is needed more than anything else. And it just so happened that that next transcendent star was a woman and plays in the WNBA.